was a teenage film snob. That's what it's called, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many
With your
times you on the
host.
show?
We've had so many podcasts. I've forgotten. I'm still expecting to say pass the remote or that's what she said or something like that. Hi, I'm Tina Chalmers. I'm your host for I Was a Teenage Film Snob. And today my guest is the very lovely, very handsome, very clever, and very funny James Chalmers.
I'm back like every week, but I'm in the guest chair this week.
Yes, but James, the guest chair is a spooky chair. Do you know why?
Is it because it's Halloween?
Halloween Month! So all the episodes are going to be Halloween.
They certainly are.
Yes.
The listeners actually have been led to believe that I'm currently in hell.
Oh, sorry. It
No.
would have been nice to be briefed on that.
No. It's
instead
fine.
of doing fucking the count to start off with. So you're in hell.
We can do whatever.
So
Well, no. So what? The reason I didn't brief you on it was because the last time we got together and did something improv, people found it too confusing. So I was
because we didn't tell them that the whole thing that we were doing was improv.
But it's fine because I was like, my whole thought was like, when I interviewed the 4 horsemen of Halloween, which is coming up, they can all be in hell.
Okay, so
this doesn't have to be in hell. This can just be in the Count's living room.
No, but okay. Well, do you want me to tell you where you are since I now know where you are?
It's up to you.
Okay, so you're in like a throne room in Lucifer's throne room, and you're sitting in a throne of flames. You have flame handcuffs over your hands.
Oh, so I'm a prisoner.
You're a prisoner. Well, it's hell, James. You can't just walk around doing willy-nilly, whatever you want, yeah? And then once you've answered all my questions, Lucifer, I guess, will let you go.
Sure.
If you have answered them to my taste.
Okay.
Yeah. That whole count thing was just a ruse.
Oh, it was like a bait and switch?
Yeah, that's
You're
right.
like, oh, you thought it was like a fun, spooky place.
Yeah.
But really it's hell.
Yeah.
Even though I forgot it was in hell because I was never told I was in hell.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
All right, so, well, I've got a couple of things that I want to talk to you about because obviously, like, I've known you for a very long time, and ever since we first met, you have always been into horror movies.
That is true.
To the point where, like, I was never really that into horror movies.
Which you did not lead me to believe when we first
like, I
dating.
liked them, but I wasn't into them the same way that you're into them.
I think that, like, you were into the idea of horror more than horror itself.
I liked gore. I liked gory sort of horror-y things. But I wasn't, again, not to the point that you like them.
I think, and again, like, you'll definitely correct me if I'm wrong here. I think you're more, like, into the artistry of horror.
Yes.
Like, the idea of zombies and, girls in skeleton bikinis and bolts in their necks.
You know, like, I was very much into, like, the misfitsy type of horror,
but not
actually watching any horror movies and stuff. And so then I built up my resistance while we watched some more horror movies, and then I finally broke and I never watched really any horror movies again.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, because when we first started dating, when we first met, you told me you were into horror. I was like, great, I can show you anything.
Yeah.
And then I found out quickly that no, I couldn't, and then so I had to kind of I was like, backpedal, and I kind of had to build up a tolerance with you. And then we got to a few, and then again, like, through no fault of my own, because of a trailer that we saw, we had to, like, then pause it, pause the horror. I remember we went to see it. I want to say it was Resident Evil 3 or maybe 4. Afterlife, I think it was. And there's a trailer for The Last Exorcism, which, to be fair, is a terrifying trailer. But because of that trailer, you were like, I can't.
There was that trailer, and then straight after it was the no. I remember we were seeing. I don't think we were seeing Resident Evil. I remember it as we were seeing. The moment that broke me was we were seeing the remake of Nightmare of Elm Street, because we saw that at Airport West, and there's a whole series of trailers before that. And before we'd even started the movie, I was shitting myself. And I was like, I can't fucking do this.
But because we saw Resident Evil Afterlife, and I remember because the trailer for Last Exorcism was in it, and that was a really creepy trailer.
Yeah.
And then that Resident Evil film isn't particularly scary, but there were a couple of jump moments we were like, oh. And then we tried again with Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
And then around that time, or is it either a year before or a year after, I went to go see Saw 6, and you're like, I'll go see it with you. And I was like, you sure? Because every time we do this, it doesn't work out. You're like, no, it's gore, I can handle it. And like it ends up being the goriest of all the Saw films, and you had your eyes covered the entire time.
Yeah.
And then I think like the most successful I've been with horror with you was last year. Where last year I was like, it's October, I'm doing my Halloween watch list as I do every single year. I was like, I'd love you to watch some horror for me. I'm going to curate a list just for you. And I think I pulled out like 10, 15 movies. I'm like, you go through these, you pick the ones you think would appeal to you the most. And I think we watched 3, and you were okay with all of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I was.
And like, granted, like one of them was barely a horror film, but like at the same time, like this.
Well, don't explain what they are. Like the listener needs to know.
So we watched Scream 4,
yeah,
which I really like, and I think because I know that like it was a frustrating film for you because all the characters do the dumb thing.
Yeah.
But that's the point of those films, and it was very meta. But I knew that because it was so kind of tongue in cheek, you could handle it. And the second one was The Final Girls, which isn't really a horror film. It's very much a spoof of horror films, the way that Cabin in the Woods is, but way less scary. Like Cabin in the Woods, you also were able to watch, but it is still a bit creepy. Whereas Final Girls is very friendly. Like you could show, like when Zoe's like 12, she could watch Final Girls. Yeah. And then the last one was Freaky, which was basically Freaky Friday, but instead of 2 friends, it was a girl and a serial killer, and that was quite fun.
Yeah.
And you did like even though like they're not like the most terrifying films. Like just because I like horror doesn't mean I have to watch terrifying movies. Like for this year's October list, I pulled 43. There's no way I'm going to watch them all, but I've pulled 43. I'm like, I would like to watch some of these. There are a couple of scary ones in there, but I know I might be answering some of your questions preemptively, so I apologize. But the goal isn't necessarily there for me to like be so scared I can't get to sleep.
Yeah.
It's more like, oh, these are cool films. I just want to go back and watch them.
So then that brings me to my second question, not actually my first question. My first question I'll hold on to, but it's my second question. Why is it that you enjoy watching scary movies? Because I know why I don't enjoy watching them. I don't like the feeling of being scared. So I feel like Angela in The Office where she's like, I hate being titillated. So the suspension of disbelief is too great for me to remember that it's just a film, and I will believe it and then go to bed that night having nightmares about it. And I don't need that stress. My life is already so stressed. I don't need that additional stress in my life. So that's why I've cancelled out horror movies. I don't watch them anymore because I'm like, I'm too stressed. I don't need that as well. So I know why I don't like them. Why is it that you do like them?
I think it stems from a couple of different things. I think part of it is that horror films, even, I started watching horror films when I was probably like 15, 16. I watched a couple earlier than that, and we'll get into that when we get to my list. But I think like it stems from the fact that they were taboo for me growing up. Like we were allowed to watch. I've talked about it on the podcast before. We weren't really allowed to watch much at all there was above a PG rating unless my dad had watched it first. So a big part of it, I think, was the taboo of like, oh, we're not allowed to see it, so obviously I want to see it, and like it's violent. So
it's like stemming from an area of it being naughty.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Like I think part of it, I mean, that's where it came from originally. So part of it was like, oh, it's going to be violent. I was very attracted to the idea of those like summer camp horror films, like your Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Nightmare on Elm Street isn't really a summer camp, but the same idea of just like teens in peril, that kind of thing. Because I was 15, I wanted to see boobs. Like, so that was part of it as well.
So how did you get away watching those movies? Like, did you have a TV in your room? Were you borrowing them from friends?
So part of it was, I worked in a video store.
Yeah.
So that's where I started to watch. In the first video store I worked in, I couldn't get away with as much. I don't say that sentence, because it was a properly run video store where the bosses are always around and, you get everything by the book. I remember when I was 13, we rented Resident Evil, my neighbor and I remember I called my dad. I'm like, hey, it's MA, can we hire it? And I don't think he understood what I said. And he was like, yeah. So, and then we didn't watch it around him. So part of it was, when I worked at the video store, some part of it was at a friend's house. And then once I worked at the second video store, which was not a very well-run video store, they let a 17-year-old close up on a Saturday night in one of the worst suburbs in the area. I could pretty much take whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
So part of it was that as well. But just going back to the question about why horror, like part of it was taboo and a little bit naughty. The other thing was I just loved the idea of monsters. Like even as a kid, I loved monsters. I loved vampires were my thing as a kid. I loved vampires.
I never knew that.
Yeah, because at a certain point, vampires became uncool. Vampire, and it's not Twilight. I know people are going to be like, oh, obviously it's Twilight. It's not. It just became an oversaturation. The same way people, by the time we got to 2006, by the time I was at the end of high school, we'd had Underworld, we had Van Helsing, we'd had various different Dracula films.
Yeah.
We had a lot of different ones, and no one was doing anything, Underworld was really cool, and I haven't watched it in a couple of years, but I remember I felt like it was just missing something. And not that it's a bad film.
Wayne and the Damned as well.
Wayne and the Damned is another one. And also I found that most vampire films were very slow.
Yeah.
And really leaned into the romance, which I don't mind. But I was like, no, I understand that Dracula's a romantic character, but not all vampires have to be romantic characters.
Like Blade.
With Blade, exactly. And then, a couple of years later, 30 Days a Night came out, and that kind of reinvigorated the genre. But vampires were a big thing for me. I remember, one of the first things that ever scared me as a kid was I want to say I went and saw, The Lion King, but it might have been the Santa Claus, something in cinemas with my aunt and cousin. And walking out of the cinema, and it was at Airport West, there's a poster for Interview with the Vampire.
Oh, yeah.
And that image of, Tom Cruise with the fangs. And I didn't know who Tom Cruise was at the point. It was just a vampire to me. Just sat with me. And then, I remember I came home, and this is when I lived in Keilor. So I came in, my dad was asking me how the movie was, and he was sitting at his desk, and his desk was in the kitchen. So we lived in a very small house. And next to his desk was the window to outside, the side of the house. And there were, bushes and stuff out there. And, my mind would just play tricks. I could just see Tom Cruise's face in the bushes.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff. And I would have nightmares for years about vampires. Yeah. Years.
So you had nightmares about it, but then that turned into you being interested in them, and they turned into be your favourites.
Well, it was still very cool. It's like how... It's tough. I think, everything's cool until... especially as a child, everything's quite cool until the lights go out.
Yeah.
And then say, oh, this is less scary. This is less cool and a bit more scary. So in the daytime, vampires are cool.
So is it almost because I'm trying to go knuckle down into the psychology of it. Is it almost the challenge of it is what drew you to it? So it challenged your fear, and by feeling that challenge, you wanted more of it?
Yeah, a big thing, especially in my late teens, early 20s, was about pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
Because I know there was a point in my life where I was I'm just going to watch everything. It wasn't even watching everything because, as the title of the podcast suggests, I was quite snobby. So I wouldn't watch, anything with a Stallone or a Schwarzenegger, although Schwarzenegger did End of Days, which was a great little horror film. But I wouldn't watch any of those big action films. I wouldn't watch your Fast and Furiouses. I wouldn't watch... I would watch superhero films. That was I can't think of the word now. I want to say example, but that's not the right. That was the exception. Exception. That's the word I'm looking for. I'm very tired. But I would watch a lot of weird films, and so there was a point, especially towards my late teens, early 20s, and beyond, where I was I just want to push the envelope. Let's just see how far I can take it. I just want to see
what your limit is.
What my limit is, but what are people doing with film?
Yeah.
What are they doing and how far can it go? And just so you know, there's so much stuff I haven't touched, and I've read enough about it where I'm you know what?
That's not for me.
Especially now that I'm a father.
Yeah.
Pre-parenthood, and there's this whole thing where you hear about a lot of people how, a lot of film fans, even ones that I knew, in the old days, like that they would love extreme cinema, and then they had a kid, and that changed everything. And I remember being like, that won't be me. I'm still going to watch extreme stuff. I can't do it anymore. Like the idea, I remember there was like a few months ago, we were having a chat, and like, you okay? It's like, yeah, I just read something about a movie out there. And I was like, it's like a 10-year-old movie. I've never seen it. It's like, just got really, like, it's really dark. It's just kind of got in my mind. I'm a bit upset about it. So I'm just kind of like, just need to clear my head. So yeah, especially anything where like children or women are victimized quite intensely. Like women are always going to be victims in horror film. It's kind of par for the course. But I'm not talking about Freddy vs. Jason. I'm talking about really extreme, disturbing stuff. Like I just can't go there anymore. And I never watched that stuff because I enjoyed it. I wasn't like, oh, righty, let's see. I spit on your grave. This will be a fun night at the movies. But it was just more this kind of psychological thing of me being like, I just want to know what's out there and why are they doing it, and where is the limit for film? I suppose it was almost more like an experiment more than anything else. But I never really enjoyed it, which is interesting because a lot of people have quite a negative view on those type of films. I'm going to use a triggering word, so I apologize, but rape revenge. Like those are big films in the horror community. Not for everyone, and certainly not for me, but I've seen a fair few of them. But people really turn their nose up at them. But at the same point, Kill Bill is revered, and that's also kind of a rape revenge film. The difference is it's quite well put together. It's not exploitative, and it's very much an empowering story. Whereas a lot of these other ones are not like that. So yeah, a big part of it, especially in my 20s, was just to see how far things would go, and that's when I went down the rabbit hole with movies like The Human Centipede, which, by the way, the first one is a cakewalk. It's not scary. It's not that. The idea is more messed up than the film itself. A lot of people, you could watch The Human Centipede.
Yeah.
Part 2?
Don't, no.
I've seen that one twice.
Why did you go back to it? Why did you watch it a second time if it was that intense?
A friend wanted to watch it, and they didn't want to watch it alone. I was like, well, I know what to expect. I can take you through it. I remember we watched it at my dad's house on the big screen TV, and
like that big extreme screen didn't make things better.
Yeah, it was like, I mean, the second time was fine. I knew what to expect, and I knew like that sort of thing. But yeah, it was pretty full on.
So that brings me to my first question.
Yeah, did I answer the question? Have I?
What was my question?
Why horror?
Why horror? Yeah. I think so.
Oh, I guess the other thing is like, even though I don't necessarily like being scared, I mean, I don't mind. Like, there's scared, and there's fun scared.
Yeah.
So, like, my example of fun scared would be the movie Get Out, which we went and saw in cinemas. Another rare example of not only did you go and see a horror film, we saw one in the theater.
Yeah.
But it just looked so cool. We were like, I've got to check it out. And that was a film that didn't have too many jump scares, but there are a couple. But it was the kind where once you jumped, everyone in the audience had a bit of a chuckle afterwards. Like, okay, that was because it was such a weird movie. Like the scares aren't mirrors and children and ghosts in your face, that kind of thing. It's just more so bizarre. So there's fun scared, and then there's like, oh my god, this is too much. So I'm probably into that kind of scare, but I do like a fun scare, and I do like monsters and stylized violence in the parameters of film.
Yeah,
I suppose, and I like being excited. I think horror films can be very exciting, in a way that most films won't be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'll have more answers to this question as we go along.
Absolutely. So then,
your first question.
What's the first horror movie you remember watching? I know we sort of skirted around this answer previously, but what was the first horror movie you remember ever watching?
The first horror film I probably saw. Well, if we're including Ghostbusters, it's probably Ghostbusters. Because Ghostbusters is a horror film, but it's also a comedy. But the scares are scary. But most people won't count that, and that's fine. But Ghostbusters would be the first one. The first one I remember watching, although I couldn't tell you anything about it, is probably Tremors, which is a film about these worms underground in the South, and it's in Texas or something like that. But I don't really remember it. So the first one I remember watching is probably The Faculty, which is a Robert Rodriguez film. And it's about these 5 teens who have to protect their school from an alien invasion. And the reason I watched it was my friend at school said it was a lot like Animorphs, where the aliens are parasites.
So how old were you at this stage?
13.
Yeah.
and the aliens literally like enter through the ear and take over their minds and stuff like that. Robert Rodriguez directed it, so he also did the Spy Kids films, which I'm a big fan of, and he did El Mariachi, which I hadn't seen at that point. Desperado, Once Upon a Time in Mexico. All of his really good films I hadn't seen because at that point they hadn't been made.
Yeah.
With the exception, well, Desperado had, but it was an R-rated film when I was 13.
Yeah.
So that was probably the first one I saw, and I really liked it. It had Elijah Wood in it. It had Josh Hartnett, Claire Duvall, who was in like The Craft and stuff. I think she was in The Craft. Those are the three that I can remember mainly. I think Jordana Brewster maybe was in it as well. And that was the first time where I was like, oh, I've never seen a movie like this before. I remember when I rented it, I said to my dad, like, can I rent it? Like, my friend said it was really good. It was probably going to be scary. I'm like, yeah, but that's okay because it's meant to be kind of cool. And it was sci-fi, so it kind of blurred the edge a bit more.
Yeah.
And I did find it scary, especially like there's some pretty like grotesque imagery. It's only rated M, but there was some pretty grotesque imagery for a 13-year-old who'd never really watched a horror film before, like some like flesh-eating stuff, like not people eating flesh, but like flesh-eating bacteria and a little bit of gore and stuff like that. But it was a lot more inferred, which I think helped.
Yeah.
So that one didn't really scare me, I got quite a thrill out of it. Like it's probably more of a thriller anyway. But it's like, oh, that was exciting, and it was weird seeing a serious film because like I'd spent most of my childhood watching comedies.
Well, yeah, because you're a kid. Like most kids, no kids watching, Downton Abbey the movie.
No, but at the age of 10, I'd seen Titanic. So look, I did watch some serious stuff, but like it was a serious film that felt like it had stakes, and it felt like there was, if I go back and watch it now, it's probably I haven't watched it in over a decade probably, so it's probably quite juvenile at this point. But it was fun and it was exciting, and it felt like there was a little bit darker than anything I'd seen before. So that's the first one I remember seeing.
Yeah. Now, I've got so many questions.
No, that's okay.
Because, like, I remember when I was around that age, when I was around 12, 13, I remember I was over at a friend's house, friend's birthday party, and they had American Pie on in the background. And I remember watching little bits and pieces of that and going, I'm out of my depth here. Like, I know that this is not for me at this age, and I felt really like
uncomfortable
with that. Did you ever get that at any point in time when you were watching your horror movies at that age?
Yes, and I can't talk about it because it's the first one on my list.
Oh, okay.
I haven't ranked them the way I've done my list. Just so you know, a bit of a preview. I haven't ranked them like in order of scariest. It's just like in order of in the timeline that I watched them. So the first film that scared me, the next film that scared me more than the previous one. So kind of
All right, well then we'll get to that in a second. I'll ask you.
That's okay. Ask me any questions you want. I'm enjoying this.
Because obviously there's so many subgenres of horror. Is there one subgenre that you like the most?
I mean, look, I've been a slasher fan for as long as I can remember. I think one of the reasons I got into horror so much is I just love the visual characterization of Jason.
Yeah.
I was just like, that looks cool. Like, before I'd even seen any of the Friday the 13th movies, I'm just like, tall guy in a hockey mask with a machete, that's cool.
So your kind of horror is more the gore, the real world, an actual person coming to just slaughter people.
But it's also quite stylized, and it's quite silly. Like that's why I was never a huge fan of the early Scream films, and that's less because they're not good films and more because I'd seen Scary Movie, which gave away all the plot points. So by the time I saw it, I was like, I've seen this, which is why I like Scream 4 so much because it's such a parody and very meta. And same with Scream 5. Scream 5 is also excellent. I really enjoyed that. But I do like the idea of just like an unstoppable killing machine who is kind of killable but always comes back for a sequel. So I like the slasher genre quite a bit. I like a bit of everything. I'll go with obviously films about cults are a big one for me. I don't find them particularly scary. It's more just the weird. Like as I get older, I'm less into straightforward narrative and like just show something weird. Because if you show me a slasher, chances are I've probably seen a version of this before.
Yeah.
And I'll go back and see every single slasher anyway because I love the genre. But if you show me something weird, like that's the one I'm going to talk about. That's why Midsummer ended up in my top 5 favorite films of all time.
I was going
to
mention
and
Midsummer.
it only came out a couple of years ago, but it was just like, I've never seen anything like this before. Even The Wicker Man, which is one of my favorite films about cults of all time, the original 1970s one, and that's a weird movie. Midsummer, managed to very much modernize that idea and do something different with it. In a 3-hour runtime and still make it compelling and interesting. So I like that. I don't go in for the torture porn stuff so much anymore. I will watch the Saw films from time to time, and the Hostel films as well. It's less about the reason why I don't go in for them so much anymore is when those films were coming out originally, it was just like I was in that. What are they going to do next? How far are they going to take it? And Saw, say we all about the plot, and they do get a bit contrived sometimes. There's a real element of creativity in those films where they're like, we have to design 5 different ways to kill people in this film.
Yeah.
And they've got to be based somewhat in realism so we can make it like a trap.
Yeah.
And, add that edge of suspense, like will the person survive, will they not, that kind of thing. So that was quite kind of fun. And I can watch, to this day, I can sit through most of them there's like one I can't. And it's a hair-pulling one. I'm just like, 'cause it scalps someone. I'm like, oh, nope, I'll skip that one, thanks. Yeah. Like, if they had a machine pulling out fingernails, I probably wouldn't be able to watch that either. Do you know what I mean? Because it's too relatable.
Well, that brings me to my last question.
Okay.
Is there a subgenre that you won't watch either because you think it's too lame or do you think it's too scary? So, like, are you not going to watch, like a mummy movie because you think they're lame, or you're not going to watch this kind of movie because it's too scary? Like, I know that, for example, I will not generally watch supernatural movies where it's like ghosts and poltergeists and mirrors because I can't do them.
There's never a genre I would rule out entirely. I remember during my 20s, I was not a fan of the found footage genre.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were doing
like Blair Witch Project and stuff
so Blair Witch Project I'd seen.
Or like, is it Contagion?
No,
the other one.
Probably the most famous one of recent years is Paranormal Activity.
Yeah.
And I remember just thinking that was kind of boring.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen the first one. I haven't gone back for the sequels, and it's fine. Same with Blair Witch Project. I just found that it gets slow. Like, there's some interesting ideas in there, but I always say there's no, my philosophy is there's no bad films. If every film is someone's favorite film, there's no bad films. But the biggest crime that a film can commit is being boring.
Yeah.
And I think that those films are quite slow with very little payoff, and that's why I have an issue with them. That being said, Cannibal Holocaust is, arguably the first found footage film, and it has some real violence in it, which is quite upsetting. But generally, as a rule, I would only steer clear of that if it wasn't done very well. But then, other movies like Chronicle, which is is a superhero film or a bit of a sci-fi one, that's found footage, is done very well.
But is there like a part of horror that doesn't appeal to you, where you go, that just doesn't interest me at all? Like, I have no interest in space horror or whatever.
No, there's no genre that doesn't interest me. I guess, like, the exception would be extreme cinema that is designed simply to upset you for the sake of upsetting you.
Yeah.
Like
theater of cruelty kind of stuff.
It's like there's some stuff, and I'm not even going to name the titles because if people want to find them, they can go out and find them. But I've read enough online about this. There's a subgenre which is called like vomit gore.
Oh, yeah.
I don't need that. I don't need to see an hour and a half of people throwing up. And a lot of that stuff.
It's like Gabe in The Office where he plays that upsetting horror movie.
Yeah. Stuff like that. Stuff like very realistic torture.
Yeah.
There are films like that that are out there. And I don't mean like Saw and Hostel. Like, those are still quite stylized. I mean, the ones that will use like a Super 8 camera. And we'll use very, all of their money will go into the effects, so it looks as real as possible. That kind of stuff, anything that's designed to upset for the sake of it, that's not really my bag.
Yeah.
And then stuff that's deliberately trying to be unpleasant. I used to be into disturbing films. I used to and I'll still be curious about it from time to time. If I hear a film is good, even if it is kind of disturbing, I'll go in for it. So an example might be like Irreversible, which isn't really a horror film, but it was a very famous film, notorious back in the mid-2000s. not really horror, but it was about an assault, and it had Monica Bellucci, and it was very, very famous. Like, Jesus, I'm going to just put my phone on Do Not Disturb. And that was quite artfully done, and was actually like quite a beautifully made film, but was also quite upsetting. It's not the kind of film that I necessarily need to watch again, and probably would never own. But at the same point, I can look at that film and be like, even though there's 11 minutes of really horrible stuff in there, this is a really well-made film, really well-told story, and there's a lot to get out of this, even though it is quite nasty in places. So, no, I'd never rule anything out, except for, as I mentioned, that kind of really deliberate, we're not even really telling a story here. Here's just upsetting images for 90 minutes. That's not really my kind of thing.
All right. Well, then that brings us to our top 5 list. So what we're looking at is the 5 movies that scared you the most.
Yeah.
So what would you be? So you were saying that you've done it in order of chronological order.
So not so much release date, although they probably are pretty much in release
chronological order for you.
Yes.
Like you having seen them.
In fact, I'm looking at it now, and they are in release date order as well.
There you go. Yeah.
Because as I got more into horror, I started seeing them as soon as they started coming out. So 5 horror films. So each one that scared me. And just for the record, I don't think I've ever really talked about it. But obviously, you know me as a horror fan. A lot of my friends, sometimes a horror fan. I get scared very easily.
Yeah.
I'm quite desensitized, but the kind of horror I watch generally is not the scary kind. Like, as I said, it's a lot of slasher. There's a lot of horror comedy in there. Like monsters don't really scare me. Although there is a monster film on here that did scare me. But I don't seek out the idea of being. I don't want it to sit with me. Anything that sits with me for more than 15 minutes after the film is probably too scary.
Yeah.
So I generally go in for fun.
Or if you watch the film and then your baby gets up in the middle of the night and you're in the darkened room.
Last night, so
she's standing in the cot, staring you in the face in this pitch black room, and all you can think about is the ghosts.
Well, we were still watching that movie at the time, though.
Like, God, that was the scariest part was being in the room with Zoe.
Yeah, in the dark and just seeing those faces. People didn't like the effects in that, but I thought they were very effective, especially considering how it haunted us during the night. All right, so the first film I watched that scared me, and was the scariest film I'd seen up until that point, was Final Destination.
Yeah, the first one?
The first one.
Yeah.
Now, I love that franchise.
Yeah.
I think it's really fun. The first one is probably, to me, the scariest of the 5.
Now, how does the first opening death happen again in that one?
That's the plane.
Right, yeah.
So that's the initial one where they're all on the plane. So it's quite, the actual scene is quite tame. It's not too shocking. Like, the second one really amped up the violence with the logs falling off the truck and stuff. That film is responsible for many people not sitting behind trucks with logs on them.
Yeah.
But the first one's the one with the plane. And it was the first real horror film that I saw. Like, even though I mentioned the fact before, this was the one. It was rated MA. It was designed for an adult audience, and it was designed to be a little bit more scary. I was too young to see it. I was 13. And before, what was the question you asked me before about? Did you ever feel uncomfortable?
Yeah.
This is the one.
Yeah.
This is the first time. So I'm sitting there, and the opening thing happens.
In the cinema?
No. At a friend's house.
At a friend's house.
So we rented it. The first 4 of the 5 I saw on DVD.
Yeah.
So we're sitting in my friend's house, the 4 of us, sitting in the lounge and watching it. And the plane scene comes and goes. It's not too bad. That didn't really scare me. But the tone of the film is unlike anything I've seen before. Like, even Final Destination films, after the first one, they're quite fun.
Yeah.
Like, there's... and I've heard Brett Goldstein, who hosts Films to be Buried with, he also plays Roy Kent on Ted Lasso. He's talked about horror and says that he equates it to being like the other side of the yin and yang of comedy.
Yeah.
Where they're very similar, where horror and comedy, it's build up, punchline, build up, punchline. It has the same effect, just one makes you smile and the other makes you scream.
Yeah.
And I actually do agree. I think there's a really good way of putting it. But Final Destination was the first movie I'd seen tonally that was so different from anything else. There was this feeling of despair. There was this feeling of darkness, this kind of grey cloud over the entire film. The film itself is very visually is very dark. But everything's fine, and then the first kill happens. And what happens is the best friend slips on a puddle in his bathroom, and like a plug swings around his neck and he chokes.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if there's any cuts, but it feels like the camera just sits on him until he dies.
Yeah.
And by the midpoint of that scene, I've gone from sitting on the floor to being on all fours, getting ready to leave the room.
Yeah.
And like even my friends like had a laugh and made fun of me, which is fine. Like I get it. I'd never seen anything like that before. And I was just like, I'm like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I wasn't expecting that. And that image sat with me for days.
Yeah.
Because it's also quite visceral. Like blood and gore is one thing, but choking is very real.
Yeah. And the way that it happened, your mind would just, for those days, would be like, what if that happens to me? What if I slip on a puddle? And then I choke, and then I die, and then
And that's what it was.
Yeah, because it's the relatability of
But not just me, but like everyone in my family.
Yeah, that's
like,
right.
I should have, to be fair, for anyone who's seen that film will know at the end of that scene, the water then manages to go back up into the it leaves the room. The water escapes, so there's no evidence. It looks like he hung himself. So like that should have been like a bit of that is your moment of levity. We're like, okay, well obviously that would never happen, but it didn't matter. It was so visceral and so frightening that like it sat with me. The rest of the kills in that movie aren't so bad. They're more violent, but because they're quite cheesy, it's okay. So like the teacher, like a bit of a drink, like falls on the computer, and it's like an old, like it's a proper computer with like a back. The screen explodes and glass goes into her, and she's bleeding, and she slips on her own blood or whatever, and she grabs a tea towel, and then these knives fall into her and stuff, and that was fine. Like even though it was quite visual, I'm like, well, that's highly unlikely to happen.
Yeah,
there's a bit where they're standing next to a railway line, having an argument, and then the train goes past and a bit of metal like flips and cuts the top of a guy's head off. Again, like not really going to happen.
Yeah.
But that first one was so intimate and so realistic. I mean, again, if I looked at it now, I probably wouldn't find it that way, but it felt very realistic at the time. At 13, it was the scariest thing I've seen in my life.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even talk about it to because I shouldn't have watched that film.
Yeah, that's
so right. I couldn't even tell my dad like, "Hey, I watched a movie that was really scary." Because he'd be like, "Well, why did you watch a movie that was scary? Don't hang out with those boys anymore." So I had to kind of like suffer in silence, and it just sat with me for. And then I went on to go and enjoy it. But it's still, of all of them, it's one I would watch the least because it is the one that still to me is the darkest.
Yeah.
And the gags are less fun. Until the end. Like, it's so weird. Like, at the very end, like, they finally make it to Paris. And they're like, wait, who was in order? And then, like, a sign comes in and hits them all. And, then, like, a rock song kicks in or whatever. And I remember being like, well, that's not very serious.
Yeah.
So Final Destination, the first one, was the first film that scared me. That really scared me to the point where I didn't have nightmares, but I was just like, oh, my goodness. Like,
and so then enough time had passed for you to then go back again? Because, like, if it scared you, and Final Destination 2 comes out in cinemas, are you going to be like, oh, I'm not going to watch that because I was scared? Or you'd be like, oh, actually, enough time has passed. I can realise that I actually did enjoy it. I'm going to watch the second one.
Well, between 1 and 2...
the next one you watch, not necessarily 2 if you didn't watch it in order. Do you know what I mean? Like, why go back to it if it scared you?
Well, I guess... a big part was peer pressure.
Yeah.
Like, my 3 friends were getting really into horror. And I think it was, again, like, it was kind of a rebellious thing. It was like, we're teenagers. We just want to do something that teenagers do, which is...
And again, the challenge thing again, like last time it scared me.
Yeah.
Let's see if this time it's going to scare me again.
Yeah.
Or what are they going to do?
But also, like, I had a bit of a... I was the kind of the newbie. I was the one who didn't have any experience with horror. Like, each of them, like... had different levels of, I guess, parent restriction growing up, whereas I grew up in a very strict household. So they'd seen violent movies, they'd seen scary movies. So this was nothing to them. And I was like, well, I need to catch up.
Yeah.
I need to be able to do it. And to the point where when I finally got into horror, they were all over it. They didn't care anymore.
Yeah.
But it never left me. Like, I still enjoyed it. I enjoyed that storytelling and just, like it stuck with me in a way where I was like, no, I want to keep going down this rabbit hole. I want to keep seeing stuff. To the point where I can name, I won't name all of them because they're not people I actually hang out with anymore, and that's not like we just grew apart or whatever. But Josh was one of them. To the point where when Hostel came out years later, And at this point, I'm a seasoned veteran.
Mm.
I've been watching all sorts of stuff. Like Hostel is probably the most violent film I'd seen at that point. But I'd seen plenty of stuff. Like Saw had come out by that point, so I'd seen the first Saw, I saw the second Saw and cinema stuff. So Hostel came out. I said, Josh, I'm like, well, watch it. Like it's a really good horror film. And I remember him being like, ooh.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, remember Final Destination? Oh, remember when I got up and tried to leave? And he wasn't like scared. He was just like, this is kind of gross. And I was like, fair enough. So that's the first one.
Yeah. All right. So then what is number 2?
The next one is a movie I've talked about a lot over our time together, and one that I was like, I would never ask you to watch this one because it's too scary.
Yeah.
It is The Descent.
Yeah, I specifically remember after you watched this one, you were like talking to me about how you were scared of that ending because it was the humans that were the monsters, really.
Well, The Descent...
The concept scared you more than anything.
We weren't together when I watched it. It came out...
What? Yes, we were.
No, it came out in 2005. But it was a film that I talked about a lot.
Oh, okay.
And when we were talking about horror films, like once I learned a bit more about what you're into, I was like, no, I would never ask you to watch this one. It's too scary.
Did I just fabricate that entire memory?
Yeah, a little bit, but that's okay. So 2005, Neil Marshall directed. Neil Marshall, great British director. He also did a movie called Doomsday, which is kind of like Mad Max meets Robin Hood meets science fiction. Like it's a really weird movie, but it's really great. He also directed a bunch of Game of Thrones. Dog Soldiers was a big one that he did. But The Descent to me is his best, and I really like it. I remember it scared me, but I enjoyed it a lot. So basically the concept of this one is a woman has just like she's like a grieving widow. She's lost her husband. And she's kind of been like kind of bummed out, like rightfully so, but she's been like
I'm bummed out. My husband died.
She's kind of like gone back into her shell a lot. She's been very isolated. So her friends are like, hey, we should all get together and go cave diving like we used to. And so one of the friends, who she's got a bit of a rivalry with as well. Like she's very much
a frenemy.
Yeah. It's a little bit, but it's more just kind of like I don't know. Like I guess frenemy is fair. I guess that's fair. But she organised it, and it's meant to be a bit more of a challenging one. It'd be really good for the girls just to get out and go into this cave. And then what happens very early on is that their rope comes loose, or one of their like things, carabiners, loose, and they tumble down. And they're like, okay, well at least we can call for help. And then it turns out where they are, there's no signal. And like, well, at least someone knows we're here. And the girl's like, well, actually, I didn't tell anyone we're going here.
Yeah, because fucking idiot. That's
and they're like, okay, well, at least someone will come by and says, well, this is not one of the caves. It's on the registered map, or whatever.
Oh, come on.
And so, like,
you deserve to die then.
Well, this is the frenemy girl.
Oh, I'm going cave diving in a place where nobody knows where it is and nobody knows where I am.
Well, she's trying to like prove how tough she is.
Fuck off.
Yeah. And so what happens is, but they're all together, but then slowly over time they start to bicker and start to isolate from each other and just start to like resent each other a little bit.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
I already do.
And then what they find out is that they're not alone in these caves, and they're like these monsters living here. And sorry, just to jump back a little bit, because you said what got me into horror, like what was it that got me into horror? A big part of what got me into horror is Lord of the Rings. I was talking about this with David. Like 20-something episodes ago, and I said, I never really thought about it until recently, but Lord of the Rings is probably one of the first steps into horror for me because of the orcs.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the orcs are quite disgusting and scary, but, like, in a very safe way where I'm like, I'm 13 years old and I'm watching this movie with some scary monsters, but also there's, like, elves and magic.
Yeah.
But, like, there's cave monsters in The Descent aren't too far removed from orcs or like Nosferatu, that kind of.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So quite like that, but it's a very dark film, and the costumes are very realistic. Like they spent like a big focus on making sure that like, when you do see them, like it doesn't look like a guy in a rubber suit.
Yeah.
Even though it is. But yeah, then what tends to go on and on and on is over time is they start to turn on each other, and even some of the girls end up killing each other. Like. Not necessarily. One of them's like an accident, But the other one's more like, look, if I injure her, then I might have a chance of escaping. So they kind of like use each other as bait and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what scared me the most, the idea of human nature, where like it's not like Saw, where
there's one evil person who's inflicting pain on people,
or Silence of the Lambs, where it's like, oh, I'm just a villain.
Yeah, it's
these are five friends
climbing over each other to get to your freedom.
That's it. Like, we were friends, but down here, like, I've got no friends.
Yeah, it's a Lord of the Flies type thing.
Yeah, so that was quite scary. But the most haunting image of that entire film is the main girl, the one who's lost her husband. She gets out. She climbs out. Spoilers for a 15-year-old movie. She gets out and she gets back to the car, and she almost gets hit by a truck, but she's safe.
Yeah.
And she's in the car, and the
monster's in the back seat.
No, and she looks over, and her daughter's sitting in the car with her, and she's like, "Oh, she didn't come with me," and that's like the first hint that like something's off. And then it cuts back.
It's the afterlife?
No, she's still in the cave.
Yeah.
And she's just sitting there looking at like a pile of bones, and she thinks she's looking at her daughter, but she's gone insane.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, like,
oh, that's really sad.
It's really like messed up. And like there are monsters around her, but like they almost kind of fear her now because of how brutal she's become. She's gone wild in order to survive. The American one, so that version, like, so it's the same film, but the American ending just has her getting out of the cave.
Yeah.
So the official ending of the film.
So is this one the British ending?
So the British, so pretty much every country except for America got the official ending, which is no, she never left.
Oh, as in the American editing.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought you meant the American version, like the American version of The Office. They reshot it or something.
No. So same movie. The American version had an alternate ending, which allowed them to make a sequel. Without the original director, and like I haven't seen it since it came out. It's fine. But the first one, like, there's this thing with Americans and horror where they're like, as long as we have a happy ending, you can do whatever you want. And it's changing. And I don't mind a happy ending in a horror film. Like,
I think I would prefer that ending. I actually feel quite sad now.
But I guess for me, it's like, and that's when I was talking before about show me things I haven't seen before. I've seen happy endings time and time again. Like The Mist is a film that like will always haunt me. And I won't talk about the ending because if the ending of The Descent upset you, this is actually more upsetting. But I was just like, oh, like, without spoiling too much and like giving too much away, basically it's a bunch of people in a car and there's a gun with 5 bullets, but there's 6 of them. So they're like, well, there's all these monsters out here. And the main guy's like, well, I'll kill you all and I'll get eaten by the monsters. So bang, 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 bang. He shoots all his friends.
I think I know this,
And then the mist clears.
Yeah, the mist clears. That's
and
right.
It's over.
So then, that's right. Yeah.
And you're like, Jesus Christ.
And he just killed all of his friends.
Yeah. So The Descent really, and that was another one where, like, afterwards, I was at my mum's and went to the toilet, and looking in the glass, I could see, like, the face of the monster.
I hate it when that happens. That's why I hate mirrors.
And that was a film where I was like, oh, it's a bit tough for me to look over my shoulder at the moment.
Yeah.
Like, almost.
Or sleep with your back towards the door.
Or I'm like, I have to look over my shoulder. Just double check there's something behind me, even though like this could never happen.
Yeah. Can I just ask on a tangent for a second?
Yes.
After you've watched a horror movie that scared you a little bit, when you go to bed, do you sleep on your back because you're too scared to have your back exposed if you're on your side?
No,
because that's what I do.
I don't, but there are certain ones where you'll also notice that, like, or you may have noticed, I don't watch a lot of horror at night unless it's something that I can handle.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going through all my horror movies at the moment, but they're all very fun. Or, like, stuff that's, like, not too scary. I was watching Mandy the other night. I started a day early for my horror movies. And there was a moment in it, which I'd forgotten, where the victim of the film, like Mandy, at one point she's coming out of the water and they did something with her eyes. I'd forgotten about where she wears like a contact. So one eye's quite big and black and the other one's quite small. And the camera just focuses on her eyes for like a minute straight. I was like, oh, this is really unsettling. I was like, I forgot about this because the rest of the film was really fun. But like, and she's not even the monster, but she just looks weird enough. I'm like, all right, what's on my phone? Like, so anything that could be potentially quite scary. Like, I just got 2 films delivered. I've got to wait till I've got a day off or a day to myself to watch in the daylight just to make sure.
Yeah.
But then there have been some films that sat with me. There's one on my list, which I'll talk about soon, where I actually think I asked you, I was like, hey, can we leave the light on until I fall asleep? It was back in the days where I'd leave my lamp on and I'd fall asleep with the lamp on, and then you asked me to turn my lamp off. Because, again, I would see the face. And that's, I guess, like a recurring theme for me. Like I mentioned it with Dracula, or with Interview with the Vampire before, and now I'm mentioning it with The Descent, and it felt about, like, there are certain face types where the image will just stick in my head, and I'll see it even though it's not there. And there are a couple other films on the list where I'll talk about faces again. But The Descent is wonderful. Like, it's a really well-made film. I watched it recently and I survived. It was a couple of either last year or the year before I sat through it all. And it was fine. You know, it's aged quite well, and I've obviously seen scarier things since then. But that one was one that sat with me for quite a while. But I've also watched films where people have been much nastier to each other since then as well. So The Descent didn't feel as horrible. But that one definitely scared me when I watched it. That was one of the first ones where I think I had to cover my eyes at one point. And little honourable mention, I didn't put it on my list because I haven't seen it since it came out, and I can't guarantee it would have the same effect. But I remember the Amityville Horror remake also made me cover my eyes at one point.
Yeah. Actually, that's another question that I meant to ask you earlier. Has there ever been a movie that people have said to you, don't ever watch this movie, it's terrifying? Like, my mum always said to me,
Amityville
never
Horror.
watch the Amityville Horror, Tina. It's so terrifying. So I never have.
No, not really. Like, I remember, like, my dad would talk about The Exorcist when I was a kid, and he never said don't watch it, but he was like, that was one that, like, stuck with him. And The Exorcist is a wonderful film, but it is 50 years old.
Yeah.
And now there are moments in it. I remember I watched it after Zoe was born. I was just going through a bunch of rewatches. Like, I haven't watched The Exorcist a while. And there's an image of, like, Satan in it. And it's just like a guy in like face paint or whatever.
Yeah.
And, like, not even like devil paint, just kind of like very like blackened features, like big eyes and like a skull. Like, and it's very effective, but it never really messed me up. And that's a messed up film. What's another one? There's another one I was thinking of. Oh, I guess like Alien. Like, my dad would talk about like the chest burst and stuff a lot and say how that kind of scared him. But no one's ever really told me not to watch anything that I can think of. Except for like those really like those disturbing films I mentioned before, where some people are like, watch it if you want, but you might not want to watch it. But like no one from like parents or anything told me not to watch anything that I can think of. That I can think of. Maybe they did, but I don't remember anything,
All right, so then what's your number 3?
Number 3 is a film that you are somewhat familiar with because I made you watch it, not realizing, thinking that you were into horror. And it's the 2006 remake of The Hills Have Eyes.
Yeah.
So directed by one of my favorite horror directors, Alexandre Aja. He took Wes Craven's original film and kind of flipped it and made it a lot more scary. Basically, the idea is this American family is driving through cross country. They break down, as families do in these films, and they have to try and find like a petrol station or a gas station to get their car fixed, unknowing that there's mutants living in the hills.
Yeah.
And they're bloodthirsty. And again, like I talked about before, like looking over your shoulder, that's kind of what this film delivered to me. It was brutally violent, even for my standards at that point. And I think I had seen Hostel probably at this point as well. Was it 2000? Maybe it was 2005. I think it came out around the same time. But again, it was just that the mutants' bloodlust was so terrifying. It was a game to them.
Yeah.
They're picking off like the people one by one. Like they're like a tiger playing with their food, that sort of thing. And there was just stuff that I'd never seen before. So like probably the scariest and most intense sequence is when the mutants descend on the camper van in the evening. So basically they attack the camper van and like they like one of them like bites a budgie's head off and drinks the blood. They tie up the father to a tree and light him on fire. They assault the teenage daughter, and it's not graphic, but it's very heavily implied that they're just like kind of groping at her and stuff. It's quite unpleasant. What else happens in it? They put one of them holds a gun up to a baby's head. Like, it's just a lot of.
Is this the one where they eat the heart?
Yes, and then
Yeah.
like they go looking for the dogs, and they come across a mutant squatting over a grandmother with her chest bursted open, and he's eating her heart.
Yeah.
And it was at that moment we're like, I think I'm done.
Yeah.
But then, like, to your credit, a week later we finished it.
Yeah, I was like, I need to pause this right now.
Yeah, and I was like, "We're going. Do you want me to take you home?" You're like, "Yeah." So yeah, it was just very. Again, it was just the whole point of like, I guess the whole idea of like violence for fun, which I hadn't really seen before. I must have seen this before Hostel, because Hostel is also violence for fun, but this was different. It was like a family of like these. They should be normal, but they grew up in kind of a kind of like a nuclear testing ground, so they were afflicted by radiation. Some of them more so than others, and they were like visually scarred and mutated and stuff. And there's one guy who's got like a big brain and is in a wheelchair and stuff. And they want to be left alone, but if people come past them, they're like, "Well, we're going to kill you and eat you."
Yeah.
So it was just very very confronting, I think, what it was. Had a good cast. It had Ted Levine, who was Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. I can't remember the actor's name, but he played Pyro in the X-Men films. Emily Duravan, who's an Australian actress who was in Lost. It was quite a big budget, and had quite a big cast considering the kind of film it was. And again, so much of the violence happened in the daylight, and that was different as well. Final Destination 2 also does that. They're like, we're going to put scary things in the daytime. But this was a little bit different because it was like everywhere you look, it's just desert. There's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to run. There's no escape. These things know those hills better than you ever will. Like, and they're going to get the drop on you. And so yeah, quite full on. And I've seen that one a handful of times. I've seen the sequel as well. The sequel is fine. It's got the preacher from True Blood, if you remember, like the anti-vampire priest.
Yeah.
Like he's in it, like as a bit of a bumbling like marine type thing. But yeah, so I think that's pretty much all I would say. Again, it was just the overt violence and like the pleasure that they seem to be taking from inflicting violence on people. That was quite scary at the time. Not a particularly scary film now, I don't think. Although I'm sure, that being said, I've seen it a few times, but I'm sure other people would find it scary. But at the time, I was just like, I remember like after I watched it, like I took the disc out and I put it in the case. I was like, I have to walk from my bedroom across the landing to the bathroom, and there are a lot of shadows between there and then. So I'm just gonna, as quickly as possible, and just try not to like scare myself. But yeah, I remember listening to an interview with the director later. He went on to do I think he did the Piranha remake. He did he's done a bunch of I think he did Crawl as well. He did Horns.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. So he's done some really cool stuff. He didn't do the Evil Dead remake. That was another director. So he's done a lot of interesting and like a lot more fun movies, like fun horror films and stuff. But I listened to an interview and he said the budgie was their backup plan. He said originally what he wanted to do was have the mutants put a kitten in a blender. And I was like, and Wes Craven, like the one of the grandfathers of horror, was like, he goes, let's not do that because people will copy that. And he goes, no. Then I was like, did you see anyone eat budgies? Like, no, like they're not going to copy it. But I am glad.
What do you mean in real life?
Yeah, in real life, they thought like they would try to mimic whatever in real life, but and I don't think they would have. But I am glad that because I probably wouldn't be able to watch that movie again if they did the kitten in the blender.
Oh God.
But that was a full-on film.
My goodness, I feel like we need to watch like a palate cleanser.
Yeah,
I haven't even watched anything. We're just talking about them all.
Yeah.
All right. So then, what's your number 4?
Number 4 comes from the director Scott Derrickson, who probably most famously at this point did Doctor Strange, the first one, and then he just recently had a film come out called Black Phone. But he did a movie in the early 2010s called Sinister, and stars Ethan Hawke as a writer. And that was a big deal because one of the first times Ethan Hawke had done horror. He's actually since done quite a bit of horror.
Yeah.
But this was kind of his foray into it. And I think, and I could be wrong here, but I think one of the reasons why we end up getting Ethan Hawke in Moon Knight is because of the relationship he had with Scott Derrickson going into horror and then seeing Scott Derrickson do a Marvel thing and be like, oh, well, I like that director.
Yeah.
He directed me into horror and now I've been offered this Marvel thing. He had quite a good time with them, so I think I'll be safe doing something. bit more of a theory than anything else, but that's kind of the line that I'm connecting. But basically, it's a film I would not have watched. It didn't. If I had seen the trailer, I think I had seen the trailer. I was like, "No, that's not for me," because it was kind of a found footage film. And as I said before, it's not really my kind of genre. But I heard an interview with the director Scott Derrickson with Kevin Smith, and they talked about it. I'm like, well, that actually sounds really incredible. So I'm going to give it a go. And basically, yeah, so Scott Derrickson, no, not Scott Derrickson, Ethan Hawke moves his family into this house because he's a writer, and he doesn't want to tell his family why he moves to this particular house, but it's just they just they're just changing. As far as I know, this is just a change of scenery. What we find out later is that this house is the site for numerous murders over the years.
It's the murder house.
It's the murder house, exactly. And what Ethan Hawke discovers in the attic is like a box of home videos, and they're all snuff films.
Yeah.
So throughout the movie, you get to see each of the snuff films, and they become more.
Oh, isn't that horrible to watch in the movie?
Yeah, but like it's stylized. Like it's not like so. Like one is like but the thing that's so scary and tragic about it, it's often families getting hurt and stuff like that.
Wait, just to clarify, because like my concept of a snuff film,
it's murder on tape.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's not what I thought a snuff film was.
No, a snuff film is literally a film where someone is killed on tape.
Oh, okay.
I know what you think a snuff film is. It's not that.
Okay, yeah.
No, I'm not. It can be that, but snuff film basically definition is like when you see actual murder on tape.
Yes.
Yeah. So the opening one is like a family hanging on a tree, and then they progressively get more intense. Like there's one which is a real like jump scare one. It's probably the biggest jump scare in the film, where like there's a lawnmower involved, and you don't see anything, but you just see like a dad lying on the ground, and then you see it, and then like it cuts, and it's a jump scare. But basically, what happens is, and what's so creepy about it is, with all of these murders, the youngest child always disappears. They weren't killed; they're just never seen or heard from again.
This is making me scared.
I
want to talk about something happy now.
Well, basically, what it is that the idea is that like there's this kind of demon or whatever, this monster called, I think it's called like Bagul or something, and people made fun of him because his face looks like a Slipknot mask, but I just thought it was quite effective. And basically, he's kind of like the Pied Piper, so like he kind of lures children. He doesn't kill them, whatever. He just recruits them, and it turns out all the children he's recruiting were the murderers in each of the scenarios.
Oh, the children were the murderers.
Yeah.
Wow. See, I was thinking it was going to be like The Simpsons, kind of like a cross between the murder house in The Simpsons and the Shining version of Treehouse of Horror.
Yeah.
I thought Ethan Hawke was then going to, like, once you watch the tape, that makes you want to murder your family.
Ethan Hawke becomes the victim.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. But the youngest child is always the murderer, which is still really quite creepy when you think about it, like the child's going around there. But that's kind of the idea. And again, like just that face of that like demon thing like sat with me. Like I remember we were living in Lilydale, I would just be looking at into the roof, and when the light went, I'm like, yep, they sure look like eyes. Can we put the lamp back on? Thanks.
See, the imagery I haven't even seen it, but like because talking about it is making me picture them. So the picture of like the hanging from the tree is what's upsetting me at the moment.
That was probably the again, like I talked about before, like the guy choking in Final Destination. That's the one that sits with me the most because it's so. I've used this word a lot today.
Visceral.
Yeah, exactly. That's a movie I own and I haven't gone back to. I want to watch it again, but I'm just like, that one really sat with me in a way that I don't know whether I'm ready to go back to yet, but I will.
Yeah. And then after you watch it, you'll be like, great, so he's gonna try and kill me.
Yeah, exactly. So Sinister, but it was a wonderful surprise because it is a really well made film. It's a really good movie. The twist, like if you don't know the twist is coming, was incredible. I just ruined it for a bunch of people, but the twist was really unexpected. The performances are great. It's not a jump scare film. Like that's something that I feel like has been kind of done to death these days. Like jump scare, like everyone relies on jump scare. Like it's kind of like slapstick. Like you can do it over and over again, but the more you do it, the less effective it is, and you end up just kind of predicting them. I prefer those films where it's like I'm just going to make you sit with this, or just make you. I'm going to jump scare, but when you're not expecting it. I remember The Conjuring did a really good version of this, where I was sitting watching The Conjuring and I kept waiting, like the jump scare's coming, and then didn't come. And I'm like, oh, it's going to come after this. And then, like, a minute later, just a new scene started. I was like, oh, you son of a... Like, I was just sitting there anticipating. And then, like, it just went away. I'm like, that's almost worse because you're tensing up, waiting for it. And then there's no release because you don't do that. You don't jump in the end. And that's what Sinister did quite well. So it's a really well-made film. It's really wonderful. All the performances are really good. But it was quite creepy.
Yeah. Whew. All right, so then what's your number 2?
No, I think that was the last one, aren't I?
Oh, wasn't that... I don't know, check your list. I thought that was 3. Or maybe I was right, maybe that was 2.
We did Final Destination, The Descent, Hills Have Eyes, Sinister.
Okay, so then what's your number 1? What's the
mama.
scariest movie that's ever... Or was the first one the scariest movie that ever scared you? Is this like
they're all the scariest films I've seen. I know like a lot of people like listen to this, but like really, but they're the ones that scared me the most and up to that point in my life.
Yeah.
So this is the last film that scared me when I wasn't expecting to be scared. So it's not so much like which one scares more. Like I thought that I knew horror films, and now you got me again. This one involves a dead child, of course, because there's a theme here.
Yeah.
Dead children. We talked briefly before about Midsommar being one of my favorite horror films. Really wonderful. Like that, it's beautiful to watch. The director Ari Aster, before he made Midsommar, he made Hereditary.
Hereditary. Now, Hereditary is quite controversial.
Yes.
Because there are plenty of people who are like, that was boring as shit.
Yes.
And do not like it. And think that it's one of the worst horror movies because it wasn't very good. It wasn't scary. According to them.
So
I've not seen it.
You'd find it tough.
Yeah.
You'd find it tough. And it's not so much that it's scary. Again, it's unpleasant and it sits with you. So I did something with this film that I never do, and I went in blind. I didn't watch a trailer at all. I'd heard all about it on the festival circuit. I'd heard about how it redefines horror. It's different from anything you've seen before. It's a long film. It's 2.5 hours long or something, and it's not jump scary. It takes its time. And I was like, great. So that sounds like the cure for what ails me. Like I talked about all the stuff that I've seen before about how predictable horror is getting. This sounds like nothing I've seen before. Fantastic. I'm in. Toni Collette got ripped off. She should have gotten nominated and won an Academy Award for her performance in this film. But basically it starts with a family who does not love each other. And that's, I think, the hardest part, or one of the hardest things is you opens with a family who whatever love was in this family is no longer there. You've got Toni Collette, who's got no real love for her husband and seems to really dislike her teenage son. So they're at arm's length. Dad doesn't really like mum, but he's trying to make it work, and he's probably like the nicest person in the family. The teenage son is a teenage boy. Like he's trying to find his own independence. His parents are smothering him, that kind of thing. And then the daughter is the weirdest looking kid you've seen in your life. She looks weird and does not help because it just makes it scarier. But the film opens with them going to like their grandmother's funeral or something like that. And for the first half an hour, 40 minutes of the film, maybe hour, I'm not sure. It's just this increasing tension of the family just not being there to support each other. And that's it's a very sad movie as well. And that's, I think, what makes it so difficult. And the teenage girls, just going through some weird stuff,
The teenage boy?
No, the teenage girl.
The young girl.
The young girl. She's
teenage.
She's like 13.
Oh.
She's into weird things. I don't think she would grow up to be a serial killer because she harms animals, but she finds a dead pigeon and is kind of interested in the fact that it doesn't have a head and stuff like that.
Yeah.
She's just a little bit weird, and she looks I won't show you what she looks like now because even though she's a real person and not scary at all, the imagery of her will be like, well, now I'm gonna have nightmares.
Yeah.
But
I thought, wasn't she supposed to have a disability?
No, I think she's just. If I remember correctly, I think she was just weird. I haven't seen it since it came out. Like,
yeah.
And this is a film that I don't think I'll ever buy. I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever need to watch this film again.
Yeah.
But basically, what happens is the teenage boy gets invited to a party, and he wants to go, and they're like, "We'll take your sister with you." He's like, "I don't want to take her with me. Like, she's just going to be a liability." Like, he just wants to get laid.
Yeah.
And I think she also has asthma because that's kind of an inciting thing, or she has an allergy or something. And so he brings her along, and he's trying to be a teenage boy and stuff. And she accidentally ingests something with peanuts, and she starts to go into an anaphylactic thing. So he's like, I have to drive her home. I have to, I have to go to the hospital, whatever. I shouldn't have been in this situation. I should not be in this situation. So he throws in the back of the car, and he's driving, and she's gasping for breath. It's very tense. It's a very tense film. It's building and building and building. And she opens the window to get some air. She sticks her head out, the cast words, and she gets decapitated.
Yeah, that's right.
And what this film does, and what the director does wonderfully in Midsommar, but really upsettingly in this film, is there are no cuts. They don't show you what happened. All they do is they sit on the teenage boy's face and a look of horror as he realizes what's happened. And it goes for, I want to say, 3 minutes. And you're just left there because that's the punchline.
Yeah.
The punchline is we're building, and the worst possible thing that could happen has happened. And then you have to deal with it. And then you're like, well, what's going to happen? Will he call the police? Will he go and get the head? What's he going to... And then he just turns the car back on and he drives home.
Yeah.
Because he's a teenage boy. What's he going to do? And then he goes to bed.
Yeah.
And leaves her in the car for the parents to find. And this is when I say, Toni Collette got snubbed. Because then what you get for the next, I want to say 30 seconds, is the most gut-wrenching scream cut over, multiple scenes of, from her waking up to finding it to, the process of the rest of the day. And if you thought she hated her son before, she really hates him now.
Yeah.
And then at one point they do cut back to the head.
Yeah.
On a desert road, and wasn't expecting that. And that's just the catalyst.
Yeah.
But it takes an hour to get there.
Yeah.
And then what happens is the mum ends up going to a soothsayer or what are they called when they can contact spirits, a medium type thing.
Yeah.
And then weird things start happening around the house. Also the girl, I didn't mention this, and it's integral to the film, is she would just do this really annoying thing where she just go throughout the movie, she would do that just that was just
So this is the thing. The whole you explaining this movie.
Yeah.
The whole decapitation. The whole. He goes into the bed and you cut to the head on the ground and blah blah blah. I'm sitting here I don't care.
Yeah.
Not blinking an eyelid. The second that you say she goes to a medium, she makes that noise and weird things start happening. And I'm guessing that noise fucking appears.
It does.
That now I'm scared.
Well, no, and what I will say is one of the most genius snap cuts I've seen.
I hate that fucking noise as well. Can I just complain for a second?
Yeah.
Because students in class make that noise.
Have they made it since seeing Hereditary?
No, I think it got to do with chewing gum.
Well, one of my favourite snap cuts of all time in any film is in Hostel, when you see a pair of metal pliers go on someone's toe, and as they squeeze, it cuts to a girl painting her finger.
I remember you telling me about that.
Hereditary might have taken the cake, where the boy wakes up and sees his sister still alive. It's not even really a vision. It's more just kind of wait, what? And then you just see her head roll off, but it turns to be a basketball rolling off the chair.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that might have Hostel beat. That's such a good moment. But then basically there's a whole other thing, and there's dead bodies on the roof or something. I can't remember.
Oh, okay.
But basically what we find out is that that medium woman is actually a friend of the grandmother's, and the family doesn't know this, but their family has been part of this weird cult the entire time.
Okay.
Where the title Hereditary comes from. And the end of the film then goes bonkers, and this is why people don't like the movie. But this is why I have a lot of respect for the film because it is so bleak and like unforgiving up until this point. The only way you can end that film is to go absolutely stupid.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. It cuts to the house and you can just see like naked people in the trees and stuff all around the house. And then like I don't know what it is, but like the mum gets.
Are they spirits?
No, just like regular people, just like descending on the house. And then like the mum gets possessed or something. She's flying around. Her head gets cut off.
Yeah.
Like all this weird stuff. Like I can't even tell you what happens then, but it just goes crazy, crazy stupid. And I remember being like, "What a brilliant ending!" Because up until I remember I was talking to someone about it, and like I hated that ending. It was so stupid. I'm like, don't you feel like that film needed a bit of a laugh? Like it's so ridiculous that it makes up for how bleak the film is. It's been a long time since I've seen it. I haven't seen it in cinemas, but I just remember being like, it's so sad.
Yeah.
And so unforgiving and so bleak and dark, and there's nothing fun about this movie. Like Midsummer, although it being very messed up as well, there's some fun stuff in there. Like well, I don't know if fun's not the right word, but like there's a lot more to enjoy, but like people crack jokes.
It's not just pathos the entire time.
Yeah, it's not like a torture to watch. But I remember that film after I watched it, I came home, I was like, right, I need to just get out of the house just to clear my head because it was so dark and bleak. So I just needed to it was also Mum's birthday. I remember I went and saw her because we went out for dinner that night. But I went out, I'm going to take the dogs for a walk. And this is when we were living in Lilydale. I get to the top of the first part of the street and the dogs stop. I'm like, what is it? There's a headless pigeon on the side of the road. I'm like,
oh, no!
Like I was like, Hereditary. And then I remember we went out for dinner that night for Mum's birthday. And I remember at one point Mum was like, "You okay?" I was like, "Yeah, when's Mum's birthday?" I just can't like shake it. She's like, "Oh, she goes, that's not like you." I'm like, "Yeah." Is you alright? I'm like, "I don't know." I saw a headless bird today. Like, it's So I'm missing a lot of details. It's been a long time since I watched it, but I just don't know if I ever.
I don't think we need the extra detail.
Yeah.
I think you've gone into enough detail.
I don't know if I need to see it again though. Like it's just again. Look, I know I'm repeating a lot of words, but I can't explain how bleak and unforgiving this film is. Like it asks so much of you and makes no apologies for what it is. And at the end of it, you just feel used up, and you're like, "Oh, that was an assault to my senses."
That's cool. Why do you want to feel like that though?
Well, I didn't know what it was.
You know,
as I said, I went in blind. I don't seek that out. That's why I haven't watched that film again.
But also, why are the directors making that then? I'm purposefully making something that's going to make people feel horrible.
Well, I guess
I know why they do it in theatre of cruelty because it's about a cathartic release. It's all about if you're able to experience your cathartic release through art, then you're less likely to be doing that sort of stuff in real life.
Well, I think also I guess I'm going to put in like a horror for dummies way, but it's the same reason why people go on roller coasters. The same reason why people go abseiling and parachuting and stuff.
That's right.
It's for controlled fear.
Yeah.
But as I said, I didn't know what that film was going to be, and I was honestly really surprised at how, because again, it wasn't scary, and that's why it's weird. It's on my list of scary films, but it's just it left me. I almost felt punished by the film.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't need to go back to it. And this is not a bad film. It's expertly made. Visually beautiful. Every shot is filmed correctly. And then he went on to take everything he learned from that film and put in Midsummer, which is truly a masterpiece. I can't say enough good things about Midsummer, but Hereditary I just don't need to see again. It just I'm cool with it. So those are the 5 films that scared me the most.
Yeah. I haven't watched them and I'm scared.
Oh, you've seen Final Destination?
Yeah.
And you've seen Hills Have Eyes?
Long time ago.
Yeah. I don't think, even now, I don't think you need to see The Descent.
Yeah.
And you don't need to, the other 3 you don't need to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm sure plenty of people will be like, really? Those are the ones that scared you? But I guess it's interesting, a lot of it had to do with there are a lot of like similar crossover, I guess.
Yeah.
A little bit. I don't know. A lot. Yeah, I think a lot of it's about like. Well, actually, I can tell what it is. They're all about a surrender of control.
Mm.
Like that's what those films are. Like Final Destination not having control over your own mortality. The Descent not having control over
what other people do.
You're like just losing control together, like being lost and no way out. The Hills Have Eyes again, like isolation. Sinister, I guess that's less about loss of control. Can't control your kids, not kill you.
Yeah.
And Hereditary again, like about loss and about just I don't know. I don't really. That's just a messed up movie. Like I don't know. I think I need to explain why that one's scary. Like that is. But yeah, that's my list of 5, and I'm happy with that. Even if people are like, "Really, those are the ones that scared you?" Like, that's the stuff that scares me.
But different things scare different people.
Yeah, definitely. But like even after watching all of those, I was never like, "Well, never again. I'll never watch another horror film." Like, I just lean to the stuff I like. As I said, I watched Mandy the night. I started watching Slither last night, which is one of James Gunn's first films. That's really fun. I've got Repo, the genetic opera, coming up. So I go for like weird, fun stuff.
Speaking of weird, fun stuff,
yes,
let's do our rapid fire.
What a segue!
Yeah. All right. So these are your rapid fire questions.
Mm-hmm.
You have to answer them quickly.
Okay.
You don't have to answer them quickly, but it has to be like your first response.
Okay. You inflict rules upon me that I don't put on my other guests.
What do you say?
I say it's rapid. I go it's rapid fire, but it's also not so rapid fire. But no, I don't. You do what you want.
You can't take 10 minutes to think about something.
Okay, go.
And then say it. All right. So, what is your favorite movie monster?
It's probably Jason.
Yeah.
But that being said, I've got a lot of love for the Xenomorph from Alien.
Yeah.
Like I was talking about this with Maddie a few weeks ago, and I said, with the alien from Alien, the Xenomorph, there's nothing more beautifully designed. I'll sit here and wait for days. No one can tell me a monster that's more beautifully designed, more elegant, more efficient, more brutal and violent, yet sleek and ergonomic than the Xenomorph. Like it's perfect. It is a perfect monster.
Yeah.
So you know what? Even though I love Jason, I'm gonna say the Xenomorph. Like even though like it's an alien, like nothing comes close.
Yeah.
I also have a soft spot for the Gill Man out of Creature from the Black Lagoon. But I'm gonna say the Xenomorph.
Nice. Xenomorph. There we go. All right. Your next one. Who is the scariest movie monster?
Most monsters don't scare me like Freddy Krueger did. I mean, look, that being said, like if any number of these ones, walked up on me in alley at night time, they'd all scare me.
Yeah.
But in terms of the context of the film, like Freddy doesn't scare me, Jason doesn't scare me, Michael doesn't scare me, the Leprechaun doesn't scare me. The only one I can think of that did scare me are the cave dwellers from The Descent. So I guess they'd have to be the scariest movie monsters for me.
Yeah.
Nothing else I can think of in a movie.
No, like Ghost or anything like that, or Poltergeist, or Unseen Force.
Well, I guess then what you're asking now, if we're taking the question step further, is it's almost like, well, in concept alone, which is scariest, as opposed to visually what is scary.
Yeah, but what do you consider to be scary?
No, I think I'm going to stick with the cave dwellers from The Descent. They're the ones that stuck with me. Like they're the ones that even now I'm like, oh yeah,
it's easy.
Yeah.
There you go. Good. So which movie monsters do you want to see in a fight? So like how Freddy versus Jason was 2 movie monsters fighting against each other.
Yeah,
so which 2 movie monsters?
It's a really good question, and I'm glad that someone wrote that question down. Ironically, or maybe not ironically, but I haven't really thought about it. Because we got Freddy and Jason, and that was the big one. That was the one that everyone wanted. And we've had the Alien versus the Predator as well. I know they're more sci-fi than horror, but they're still monsters. Who do I want to see fight? Yeah, So I guess the other thing is like most monsters don't really fight. They almost have like powers and stuff. Like Freddy doesn't do any of his own work. Like he conjures up illusions and they do things for him. And like same with like Pinhead and stuff. Like he doesn't really do anything. It's more. What does he find?
It could be spirits or something like that. It could be like demons that are mentioned in movies.
I'm just trying to think. I
Here's
know.
one that I don't think's been done: Alien versus Predator.
I literally said Alien vs
I
Predator as
know,
well.
I was joking.
Okay.
So of course I was joking.
I mean, like, it might be funny to see like Chucky fight the leprechaun.
Oh yeah,
But like, it's just like Freddy vs. Jason.
that Chucky's annoying.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of those Chucky films. The first one I didn't care for at all. I don't think it's a bad film. It's just not for me. Even as a kid, I was like, I don't get it. Like, he's like 1/10 the size of every other monster. Like, what's like, just kick him into the fire. Which, spoilers, they do.
Yeah.
The second one I did like, because the second one is a direct sequel and it's kind of about grief and processing the events of the first one. I quite liked that. I was like, oh, it's really is a continuation of the story. And I liked the recent remake where Mark Hamill was the voice of Chucky. And he was like not AI, but he was a more modern doll, so he could then like interfere with Wi-Fi and people's phones and stuff. And
yeah.
It sounds kind of cheesy, but I actually like. Well, that actually kind of is more scary because he has more tools to his that he can use. But
yeah.
Back to the question at hand. Um.
Do you want me to come? Do you want to come back to it?
No, I know that I know we've got places to be, and I know we've got to wrap this up. I just can't. I didn't think I'd find this question that hard, but I'm really struggling.
Well, let's think of some movie monsters.
Yeah.
So we've got all the classics from the 50s. So you got like Frankenstein and Dracula and the mummies. You got the Thing. Thing's good. What about the Thing versus the Mist? Ooh.
Well, the Mist isn't a monster though. Like the Mist just the monsters live in.
But yeah. That the monsters, you just use the word monsters.
Yeah.
Monsters live in the mist.
I'm trying to think. I would go. Part of me wants. Do you know what? I'm gonna change the question. I'm not gonna change the question. I'm gonna go classic versus 80s era. So I'm gonna do team. So Dracula and the Mummy and like the Creature from the Black Lagoon and Frankenstein and all those like from the Universal monsters of the black and white era against the 80s slasher villains. So versus Freddy and Jason and Leatherface and Michael. And look, I'll be honest, those guys from the 70s, 80s are going to absolutely destroy them. But
yeah, I was like, that movie's going to last 5 seconds.
But if you like, but
it'll be fun.
And also, like maybe like those guys from the 30s and 40s, like maybe they can get some modern upgrades and stuff. Like I don't know, that would probably be the way I would go. Yeah, I'm not like thrilled with that answer, but I also can't think of anything else.
Yeah. All right. Well, then our last one is this one's quite fun.
Yeah.
Which movie monster needs a sequel in either space, Hawaii, or the future?
Yes. Well, Jason's already had a sequel in space.
That's right, he has.
And the future.
Yes.
Jason X, which is on my list of films to watch through October because I haven't seen it in a while. I mean, like Jaws in space? No. I think, I should have like Jaws versus the Creature from Black Lagoon.
There you go. You can make that.
But Jaws doesn't really have any motor. He's just hungry.
Yeah.
He's not even a motivator. Who's going into space or future or Hawaii? The only reason
Hawaii would be fun.
The only reason I threw Hawaii in there is because, like, in the 90s, there was a rumor of a Beetlejuice sequel called Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, that's going into the question. I feel like Freddy Krueger in Hawaii would be kind of fun because he could play on, like, you could get a lot of sea monster action. You could get, like, people dreaming of sharks and piranhas. And although, again, that's very much just the one thing. So I don't know whether I did that. I'm just trying to think, which is evident and not doing a very.
What about if you could, you choose your favorite movie monster, which is the Xenomorph. What about the Xenomorph in Hawaii? That'd be great.
That would be good. Yeah, because he's also already in space and in the future.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
So he can only go to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Look at Xenomorph on a surfboard.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like, it also depends on the kind of genre that you want to do. If you wanted to do a comedy, or did you want to make it like really serious?
I also like the idea of like zombies in Hawaii.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah,
because you get like, and I know that like, without being offensive, like I'm not trying, because I know that like obviously Hawaiian culture is different to other island culture, but you could kind of tie in a bit of voodoo there.
Yeah,
but also
you know, it'd be a good versus you could do zombies versus the 70s and 80s, like Jason and Freddy and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Zombies
that's
versus
actually much
them.
better. So let's do that. I'm glad I thought of it. Yeah, that I think like the idea of zombies on Hawaii, because also it's an island, so there's no escape.
Yeah. And you could do like people who've like died in the sea, like come out of the sea and stuff like that.
Pirates and zombie pirates and stuff. And like maybe this is the time where the volcano is about to explode. So it's like it's lava or zombies.
Yeah,
there's no escape.
Is it?
So I think you do a really fun thing with that. So I'm going to do zombies in Hawaii.
Yeah,
I think that'd be quite fun. And again, the idea of like there is no escape. Like you can't. There's no buildings to get to the top of.
Yeah.
Like it's an island, and that shows how limited my knowledge of Hawaii is. Because I'm sure that like it's not
a series of islands.
Yeah. But that's what I would do. Zombies in Hawaii. I think that'd be quite fun.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, James. Well, as Lucifer, I've decided to keep you in hell. What do you want me to do?
Well, I've got to stick around.
Yeah, you got to stick around for the other people, don't you?
But
I'm sending you to a different circle of hell.
Oh, okay. I'll take that.
I can't remember what they all are.
There's 7 of them.
There's 7. I know there's 7 of them. This was number 7. You're going to number 6.
Okay.
Yeah, you're moving down.
Okay.
Yeah. So the throne of flames has been bling. Disassembled.
I was working up a sweat. So I'm glad
that's right.
It's interesting that I was able to scare the devil. Actually,
yeah.
The devil
needs to watch a bit of Seinfeld before they go to bed.
He's like, well, let's rename hell Seinfeld.
Yeah. So now I'm sending you off to another circle, out of my sight. You.
Okay. Well, I hope that you learnt a lot about horror.
I did.
And
I got some good ideas to inflict on people in the mortal plane.
You're like heads and basketballs.
Yeah, that's right.
Nice one. Do you want to end the episode?
Yeah. So, do you have anything that you would like to plug?
Keep listening to this show, please.
Like, subscribe.
Yeah. You can listen to the show on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor FM. We just reached out to like iHeartRadio and Google Podcasts and stuff like that as well. So
and leave reviews as well.
Leave reviews; they definitely help. 5 stars only. If not, Lucifer's going to drag you into hell with me. You can follow.
You got to listen to this guy.
Yeah, exactly. You can follow on Instagram. We're garnering quite a few followers there now. My podcast Instagram now has more followers than my personal one. I don't have a lot of friends, but even still, that was a nice little milestone to hit. And I'm doing. I'm trying to watch as many horror films throughout October as possible. So give a like and let me know what you're watching as well. I'm very keen to see what people are doing for Halloween.
Yeah, and I'm going to plug my Feminist Mum blog, which is at Feminist Mum blog on Instagram. And I think that's all we have to plug.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode
of I Was a Teenage Film Snob. And listen, my husband was a teenage film snob. We heard it from him like tonight about his snobbery with horror movies. But look, guys, he's trying to be better.
We'll see you next week.